Greetings, travelers. Today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, so you better strap in. It's going to be a long video, and maybe a bit more serious than what you might come to expect from me. I've been trying and rewriting this script many times, and at this point I just need to get my thoughts out there. There are many discussions within the Final Fantasy XIV community about damage, new players, and how we treat each other. When I first started my journey, I was a simple conjurer, hell-bent on learning the game. I don't even remember why I chose to play healer. Maybe it was the faster queue times, or the fact that I mostly played support in League of Legends back when I used to be a toxic shitter. My friends told me not to worry, and that to heal properly I needed to deal damage and heal at the same time. This mindset was ingrained into me from the very beginning, although I did start by just trying to get my dot down while keeping the tank alive until I was more comfortable. However, during the olden days, once I was around level 15, I learned about jobs and that you needed to level another class to unlock White Mage. God, how did we play this game back in the day? I was also trying to play with my friend group who already had a White Mage, and they encouraged me to play Scholar instead. After what felt like about a century and many DPS queue times later, I was finally a Scholar. I then quit the game, I came back, got a group wiped on Titan Normal enough times for our tank to rage quit, and then I quit the game again. I finally came back in Shadowbringers, and I've been here ever since. You might be wondering why I share this story, and it's for one simple reason. That run of Titan has stuck with me for my entire Final Fantasy XIV playtime. It's ingrained into my body like the blessing of Hydaelyn. I said to myself on that day that I'd do everything in my power to never wipe my party again. And we can see how great that's gone. Jokes aside, what I find interesting is that everyone has different experiences in this game as you progress through the main story. And it is weird to realize that if I never casted a single damage spell, or was trying to learn how to DPS while playing healer, I probably would have never wiped in that run of Titan. If instead, all I did was top off our tank when he was low, and do nothing in between. Which is what brings me to today. I became a better healer overall by taking the risks and learning how to play better in the beginning, by having the right mindset from the start. As many know, our community is special in many ways. As more people join and learn to play, something that frustrates some players is the lack of skill and understanding that people can display. And my thoughts on this are very simple. I don't think most players want to adopt a playstyle that completely hinders their party. The real issue here is that Final Fantasy XIV does not even try to explain to players how to play well, or encourage them to do so. You can, in fact, play through the entire main story, only cast heal spells and instances, and you will probably get through the entire MSQ. However, the thing to notice is that if you play a healer, it is incredibly obvious if you never cast damage skills. It's something that everyone can see. Similarly, even tanks are easy enough to tell if they never use mitigation when they probably should. These classes are very visible, and this visibility is what I think drives a lot of the anxiety that people often describe when playing tanks or healers for the first time. People know when you do a bad job. And on top of this, your mistakes can often be the most devastating, resulting in your team wiping and having to reset. This is why each of these classes will probably result in the most amount of feedback received, because people can tell when you're not playing well. And this is where I tell you, it is okay to be bad. You have to be bad at something first before you can be good at it. If you're willing to learn, you'd be surprised it doesn't take that long to not constantly wipe your team. Which finally brings me to DPS. This class archetype is completely invisible when it comes to their contribution to a party. Unlike healers, and tanks to an extent, the indication that DPS are playing well is almost non-existent. Enemies will die faster, but that doesn't really tell you the whole picture. One DPS can be playing exceptionally well, while the other doesn't even know what their buttons do, leading to really only speculation as to what anyone's even doing. This is double-sided though, as a DPS player will pretty much never get player commendations because you can never tell when they play super well, and at the same time you can't easily tell when they play extremely poorly. A thing to consider though is what is the minimum amount of work required to clear normal content. As a healer, you just need to prevent your tank from dying. As a tank, you just need to maintain aggro, and a DPS doesn't need to do anything. DPS exists to simply kill mobs faster, with the exception of stack mechanics and the incredibly rare DPS check. You can run most normal content at level with just a tank and a healer. It will be slow as all hell though, but it is possible to clear. Obviously, this is why good players are not measured by just being able to clear content. It's usually a combination of how fast they can clear content and what content they know how to run. The game itself doesn't offer a proper tutorial on how buffs stack, what an opener is, or how to rotate through your abilities properly, and you can clear and complete the MSQ with doing next to nothing. Then it's not a surprise that some players are completely lost. Not to mention that bad players will breed more bad players, as they can now offer harmful advice, although with good intention. Why should they be considered wrong when they completed the entire MSQ in level from 1 to 80? So how do you get good right now? You look up guides online for how to play well. Thankfully, I know a guy who makes entertaining class guides. You can follow him by hitting the subscribe button or check me out on Twitch. In all seriousness, though, you do have to look up resources online from outside sources to get an idea of what serious gameplay looks like. Now, this kind of discussion is met with a lot of common backlash, which is that the story content, the MSQ, needs to be designed so that the worst players in this entire game can clear it. Why should people learn how to play the game better if they don't need to experience the content they want? And to that I say, you are completely right. At the end of the day, getting through an instance is all that really needs to be accomplished. You could jump off a cliff at the beginning and let the rest of your team figure it out. But what's funny to consider is that if a healer were to try to pull that stunt, you wouldn't be able to clear the content. If you choose to not even come close to playing a DPS well, you are hurting the other players that you play with, even if such devastation is not your intention. DPS should not get a free pass, and right now they do get to avoid any scrutiny from the game itself. I'm not talking about other players. A DPS can tank a floor for an entire instance, but healers don't get that luxury. They have to at least survive. And what I think is frustrating is that all players can play through the entire story and not even know themselves that they play like crap. Because the fastest thing that will make players want to play better is when they know they were at fault for a bad run. Not that I want a ton of negative feedback in the game, but I'm saying some already exist for classes that are not DPS. And I know that people don't want to ruin other players' experience. It's why so many feel anxious about being a healer or a tank for that matter. If you feel that kind of anxiety, you are more than likely going to be successful though, because you probably already have the mentality to not hinder others. So it's not any different from myself all those years ago. I made a choice back then to stop playing the game because I couldn't play well enough to support a team. And when I came back, it's what motivated me to get good so that I wouldn't hold others back. It's okay for players to be bad. We as a community are actually pretty good at accepting bad players. People will try to carry you to the end of MSQ instances because they want you to experience the content that you want to, whether that's crafting or just being able to see the last cutscenes of the story. But there does have to be some kind of motivation for people to play better because it will help everyone overall. Which finally brings me to Parsers. This is the only way to get an idea of what playing a class well in Final Fantasy XIV is like, because there is no way to tell if you are dealing more damage otherwise. It's not realistic to add up all the numbers in the damage log for yourself. Having a parser is one of the single best ways to get better at Final Fantasy XIV because it gives you the actual feedback that is needed to know if you did your DPS job well. You can visibly see the improvement when you play better. And this is where I say that I genuinely think that people want to help others play well. Yes, there are toxic people in this community. There will always be people who will flame others who don't play perfectly, and those who also refuse to learn how to play the game at all. However, in my anecdotal experience, I don't find this very often. People are usually willing to learn, and most people want to help others get better and clear the content a little faster. I am not here to flame people, because when a surprisingly large amount of the community has an issue, that is not an indicator that individual players are failing. That's clearly an issue with the game itself. Now, the community can have some amount of impact on this. We can try to encourage players to play a little better, but it's not worth it because no matter how you phrase it, people are not going to take criticism well. A parser will just tell you the numbers because it is a program and not a person. This is why something like a damage meter is nice because it does just tell you the numbers. It's a program, not a person. It's a little bit easier to digest that information. And you'd be surprised by the number of players who parse. I guarantee you that most players who clear hard content probably parse. And a surprising amount of people who don't even play hard content, but just want to optimize their gameplay a little more. And if you don't want to do it right now, if you ever desire to get into advanced content, you're going to have to learn how to DPS properly, because you go from having no impact on a run to being a deciding factor. Having a good foundation to practice on will make it significantly easier if you ever want to start playing better. It's also a distinct advantage of playing on PC versus PS4 because PC players can get the actual numbers from parsers. However, you have to violate terms of service to do so. So what ends up shocking most casual players who want to start running harder content is that after playing MSQ for over 100 hours, there's no guarantee that you come out the other side adequate for that content. And on top of that, there's barely any in-game resources to help you get good enough if that's what you want to do. So I leave you with my hot take. What is often stated is that parsers are banned. They exist for a reason, but they have to be secret. Square Enix themselves say that damage meters will make the game more toxic, but answer me this. People wipe in content when a healer fucks up. Healers will hardly ever get flamed for making a mistake. Maybe my experience is unique, but I usually just say, my B, and then we move on. Is it really that crazy to think that public damage meters would not result in people flaming in chat that often because there is already a precedence against that kind of behavior? I'm not suggesting that public damage meters should be implemented, though. You can certainly have private ones, so you know for yourself how much damage you're doing. If you notice that your damage is not what you would expect, it can help serve as a nice motivator, because everyone is usually their own worst critic. It's not a perfect solution, but it is one of the easier fixes. This game does provide some negative feedback to players like healers, but it also doesn't provide that much positive feedback when players play well either. To which I say this, if you are new, or if you just suck, it's fine to be bad, but you should always work towards being better. Don't worry if you're not good enough right now, because it doesn't mean that you're trapped there forever. The best players in this game did not start out by instantly being successful. I didn't become a middle-of-the-road scholar player on day one, because even I struggled to get through Titan normal. Don't be a dick when it comes to other players. Don't ruin their experience. That means both through intentionally hindering your gameplay and by getting angry at people in chat for whatever reason. You don't have to be trying as hard as you can all the time, but there does have to be a nice middle ground where something can be deemed acceptable. Just being able to clear the normal content is way too low of a bar. For the time being, though, if you want to improve your gameplay faster and you want to be able to see how utilizing a proper rotation, opener, and knowing when to use your AoE rotation make impacts, then don't parse because it's a violation of terms of service.